We welcome RabbI Mendel Kessin, a dear and old friend of the yeshiva, a student of the Ramchal, Reb Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, Zichron Tzaddik Kadosh L'Bracha, right? A learned and great teacher who we've had the pleasure of having here before, and hope this is one of many more times that will come. Tonight's teaching for Tisha B'Av and for the current events is sponsored in memory of the elevation of the soul of Yeshaya ben Yisrael. And just as my job as Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva Rebbe Akiva, I have to do what I have to do. I have to remind people, anybody that would like to help the yeshiva, donations are welcome. We have a 501c3 American tax deductible number if anybody wants to make checks. And if anybody wants to give cash, there are tzedakah boxes around. This is sponsored and it's free. The offering is our free will offering. If anybody wants to help over and above that, we certainly welcome. We're here for the community. We're here as a place for people to come and learn. We invite anybody who's looking for a place to come learn to visit with us. And we want to welcome and give our deep blessings to RabbI Mendel and his family and thank him very much for coming. Hope everybody enjoys the shiur. God bless.
It's a pleasure to be back to speak about. First of all, I want to thank Rav Shalom and for allowing me to speak and to speak really about very profound, very important ideas. I want to speak tonight about two really what seemingly is independent topics, but really they're not. I want to speak about tonight about, obviously, we are in the 9 days, which means Tisha B'Av is Sunday, really it's Shabbos, but it's a Nidche. And I want to speak about some of the very important concepts of Tisha B'Av. That's the first idea. And the second thing, I want to connect it to what is happening now and why. And in many ways, they are very much connected, even though it doesn't seem so. Now, I don't remember what I said last year, so if I wind up repeating myself, I say you forget from year to year, you know. But I think there are new people here, I'm not sure. So you'll just have to forgive me. Someone will be a chazorah, although, and for others, of course, it'll be completely new. It's a Gemara in Brochus. It's Masechet Brochus. It's Masechet Brochus, Daf Gimel. Very interesting Gemara. And it looks like it's simple to understand, but really it's very profound. The Gemara is about somebody went to daven in a churva. And when he came out, Eliyahu Hanavi, who they, obviously these people were so great that they were able to speak to Eliyahu and see him. So Eliyahu Hanavi asked him, first of all, several questions. Why did you go to the churva? So they went to daven. So then he gives him certain halachic ideas. But the main idea is he asked him, when you were in the churva, now obviously that churva was the Beis Hamikdash that was destroyed. So he asked him, did you hear anything in that churva? So the I think it was a Tana, I'm not sure, I think it was Rabbi Yossi. Anyway, so Rabbi Yossi said, yes, I heard something. I heard a voice roaring like a lion. And what did it say? Eliyahu asked him. And he said what it said was very interesting. And obviously this was the Shechina, this was the Rabbanu Shalom. And the Rabbanu Shalom, so to speak, the Shechina, Ushoya Kari, was roaring like a lion, which means that there's a tremendous state of agitation. Because that's when lions roar. And the voice said, Oili, woe is to me, that I have hechrafti es beisi, I have destroyed my house, which is the Beis Hamikdash. I have destroyed Yerushalayim. And I have exiled my people amongst the Umas Ha'olam. This is what it says in the Gemara. So Eliyahu Hanavi said to him, I want to tell you something. It's not that you happen to hear something now and that's it. No. This se'oka, this roar, goes on every day 3 times. Imagine that. 3 times a day, the Shekhinah roars like a lion and says, "Woe is to me that I have exiled, that I have destroyed the Beis Hamikdash and Yerushalayim, the Heichal and the Bais, and then I have exiled my people," which of course means Golas. And it goes on 3 times a day. This is the Gemara that this Tana of Yossi said. Now we can understand that. I mean, the Baruch is obviously incredibly agitated, kaviyachol, and tremendously in agony or anguish about the entire requirement or necessity to exile, to destroy all these, the Shalayim and the bias and the Golas and so on. But the truth is, what is the agony really about? What the agony is the following. It would seem that, well, what the Baruch did is he destroyed everything. He kicked out his kids from Eretz Yisrael, obviously, sent them to the Goyim, which of course invites them with the tremendous persecutions, and therefore, that's it. Yeah, I can bring the Gula. There's no redemption after this. What the Baruch now has to do is yank us out of this. That's what it would seem. So it would seem, therefore, that the agony or the anguish of the Baruch was the fact that the Gula is suspended until we, what's called clean up our act, do tshuva, and we come back. That's not what the agony is about. What the agony is the following. The Baruch knew that Klal Yisrael is not going to do mitzvahs. The Baruch wants Klal Yisrael to do mitzvahs. If Klal Yisrael does mitzvahs, they bring the tikkun. What the tikkun simply means is the rectification, the correction of an existential state. What is that state? What the Baruch did is he absented himself from the Bria. He conceals himself. And the tikkun is where the Baruch returns to the creation, so to speak, or more accurately, amongst man. And he specifically concealed himself, to give man a task, what to do, so he can bring him back. This is the task of man, is to bring God back into the Bria. That's called tikkun. The way to do this is the Baruch realized, well, how are you going to do it? And the answer is mitzvahs. Without coming to why, what a mitzvah does is a device, that simply testifies to the fact that you believe that the Baruch is supreme and his will is supreme, and therefore you will do his mitzvahs. That's what a really mitzvah is. It's simply a device that enables you to testify about something, and that something is an act. In other words, you got to suspend your own will because you don't want to do this, right? And do the mitzvah. So by the act itself, you testify in a muvador that besides the Baruch there is nothing else. Only his will is supreme. That's a mitzvah. But the Baruch knew that people are not going to do mitzvahs because the Baruch sees from one end of creation to the other. Not only that, he sees for all time. There is no time to the Baruch. So he knows that if this is the device that he's going to rely on to bring Geula, redemption, which is nothing more than the tikkun, then it's not going to work. Klal Yisrael will not do a sufficient amount. So therefore the Baruch gave a second device. What device is that? Tshuva. Tshuva is a creation in itself. When a person does tshuva, what is he really doing? What he is doing is saying, I'm sorry, I regret what I did. In other words, I recant, or I take back the testimony where I think I'm somebody and I can do whatever I want, and that's not doing the mitzvah or chet. And he changes his testimony and says, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That only the Baruch really is, and it's only his will that we need to listen to. So tshuva is a reversal of testimony. That's its mechanism or its principle. So therefore he created tshuva to allow man to have charata, regret. That's a great device. But the Baruch knew something else, that people will not do tshuva, or they won't do tshuva adequately. So therefore, what the Baruch had to do is give a third device. And that third device is called suffering or yisurim. That's a third device. Now, there are many forms of suffering. Many forms, we know. There's exile, there's persecutions, there's bankruptcies, there's divorce, there's all parnasa fails, all kinds of yisurim. But the objective of all yisurim ultimately is to bring the Rebbeinu back. And the question is, how and why? I can understand why mitzvahs and tshuva work, but why should yisurim work? You mean just because I'm in pain, that's going to bring God back? And the answer is yes. Why? Because the essential war that a man conducts is, who's the boss? Me or God? Man is always at war with the Baruch. The way it translates itself here, in this world, is man is at war with authority. We automatically reject any type of authority. Why? Because we are the boss. We don't want to take orders from anybody. Really? So therefore, every person has in his mind, ultimately, an unconscious struggle to denounce self and to replace self with God. This was the Machom of Adam Rishon, because the Nachash offered him an incredible opportunity to be like God, Yisrael Kelokim. And Adam, Chava and Adam, whatever, accepted that argument without going into that. It's a whole different direction. But ultimately speaking, Adam's conflict is the conflict of man. Man strives to be God. So it's interesting. People, whether they know it or not, they are always thinking either of being God, killing God, right? Or somehow dismissing him. Unconsciously we do that. Without getting into the myriad ways we do that. Therefore, what the Russian says is, I got to whittle you down. Because that's half the battle. If I can show you that you're nobody, then there's a chance, maybe you recognize that there is somebody else. You see. And Yisurin does it. When a man suffers, what does he learn? You go to a hospital, you go to the ICU, and you see some guy with $100 million, and he's plugged into every known device in the hospital. Tubes, everything sticking out of him. What do you think he's thinking about? How great he is because he made that money? No. If he was so great, what he should do is unplug everything and walk out. Well, obviously he's not going to do that. So his suffering is really, in many ways, it teaches man that you're zero. Now, therefore, man now has an opportunity. Well, if I'm zero, what else is there? See, so Yisurin is half the battle. That's why Yisurin is also a testimony of Einod Bavadai, but it really is a testimony, or that what? That I'm nobody. That's the essence of Yisurin. And besides, Yisurin also is a Midah Keneged Midah. When you do an Avera, you get pleasure. So the Yisurin of the Yisurin, it takes away, it's Midah Keneged Midah, removes the pleasure that you got when you sin. Anyway, so therefore there are three devices. However, what's interesting, therefore, is that there are two methods to bring the Geula. One is mitzvahs and tshuva, and the second method, so that's called method A. Method B is Yisurin Churban. That's the method B. So what the Russian was saying, look, they're going to do the Geula through Churban, because I've instituted method B, a second way of bringing the redemption. But who wants to do that? If you have a kid that doesn't want to respect you, right? You can either try to talk to the kid, and if ultimately the kid doesn't care, you throw him out of your house. And then that kid will realize what he lost, you see? But that's a very severe form of instruction, you see. So the agony of the Rebbeinu really is that woe is to me that I have to now bring the Geula essentially through method B, which is the whole concept of Yisurin, Churban, and so on. That's the agony of God. Not that we won't bring the Geula, we will. But who wants to do it this way? You see. That's a very important idea. But what's embedded in that idea is something even more important. Since the Rosh knows that Jews are going to sin, what he has therefore instituted is that I'm going to, in some way, bring Tahara through Tumah. It's astounding. That somehow wading through tumah, defilement, actually brings tahara. In fact, it's a pasuk in Iyov. Umiyiten tor mitomei. Who's the one that can bring tahara from tumah? It's the exact opposite. How can tumah create tahara when tumah is the defilement? That's one of the great mysteries of this bria. But therefore, since tumah and churban and averos are all tied together, the Baruch Hashem, in some way, allows the Jews to bring the tahara through the tumah itself. Very important concept. There is a mitzvah in the Torah that really is meramas that. The great mystery of the Poraduma. Poraduma is an interesting mitzvah. You take a cow, whatever, a couple of years old, you burn it, and it's ashes. Then you take the ashes, you mix it with spring water, and then you sprinkle that on a person who's tameh, like touching a corpse, tameh. The interesting thing about it, why it's so mysterious, is besides the fact that cow and it's red, right? And not only that, but you burn it and then you sprinkle it toward the bias and so on and so forth. What is this? In fact, even Shlomo Melech had problems with it, because it says, I thought, I can become wise. It's really very distant from me. The Poraduma, what is the mystery of the Poraduma? It's machlokes. But the Gemara says that the mystery of the Poraduma is that the one who sprinkles the waters becomes tameh, and the one he sprinkles it on becomes tall. So the question is, how can somebody commit an act which is an act of tumah, because it's a matame, right? Yet the individual that you sprinkle on becomes tall. Well, that is the mystery of umiyitain tol mitame, that tumah leads to tahara. But the truth is, what it really is, red. What is red? Red is a satan. It's his color, okay? It's a satan, the Yitzhar, and so on. And what the Paraduma really is, without going into the whole thing, is that by obliterating this red cow, okay, that itself is the path to Tahara, which is the Gula. Therefore, the one who sprinkles it, he's involved in the Tumah, so he's Tameh. But since Tumah itself is a device to bring Tahara or Gula, therefore the one he sprinkles it on is Tah. That's really what it is. The Paraduma is really method B. It's the side or the secret of method B. It's interesting. Which shows you that by the destroying the Paraduma, that itself is the Geula, because that will make a person tall. In any case. So the Paraduma really is that concept of method B. Now the thing is, we don't know what this method is. There's certain ideas we know, it's based a lot on Yisurin, but part of method B is something even more strange. It's the old kasha, when Moshe Rabbeinu said to Moshe, Tzadik v'raloi. Why is it Tzadik? You find Tzadikim, and they go through terrible times. And Rosh v'toivloi. Meanwhile, we have a lot of evil people out there, and they can't stop being prosperous. It's like, it's like incredible. How do we explain this? That's method B. Because what method B is, it looks like it violates justice. It's the concept of less din less dayan, and yet that itself will bring the gula. You see. So therefore, this method is mysterious, really how it works. And it itself can bring the gula, the redemption itself. Why can't it do more than that? Or why can't we know how it works? And the answer to that is a very interesting Gemara. The Gemara says Rabbi Akiva died on Yom Kippur in Caesarea. He's one of the Asora Harugei Malchus. We know that. Right? Famous. He died in a terrible way where the Romans ripped his back off with an iron comb. Terrible way to go. Anyway, what happened then is the Malachim addressed the Rosh, and they said, we can't believe what's going on here. Zu Torah v'zu schor. This is the Torah and this is the reward? It's unbelievable. Not only is this the Torah, Rabbi Akiva is Torah Shabbat Peh. Without him, we wouldn't have Torah Shabbat Peh. He was incredible. He had the 5 Talmidim that rejuvenated the whole Torah after 24,000 Talmidim died. Rabbi Akiva is Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Malachim really couldn't understand it. Okay, I can't believe this. This man is responsible for Torah Shabbat Peh, and he is being destroyed brutally. How do we understand this? What they were really asking is what? Is we don't understand. You say that through Ibud, Churban, Tumah, the Geula can come. How? And this is one of it, that Rabbi Akiva's death, which is so horrendous, this is going to bring the Geula? So that's what they asked the Rebbe Hashem. So the Rebbe Hashem says to them, excuse me, that's my words. If you keep asking me this question, I'm going to restore the world to Tohu Vavohu. I'm going to restore it to the original state of creation when the earth was unformed and void. And that basically means it's all over. You know? Now, we don't understand what that means. Why? Because, wait a minute. First of all, this is not an answer. They asked you a legitimate question. You don't want to answer to them, so say, it's none of your business. Fine. Right? The second thing, to me, it sounds like a real threat. It's like the Moshe was flexing his biceps and says, you know, you don't stop this business, I'm going to smash all you guys. That's what it sounds like to me. It's a threat. Mm-hmm. Now, we don't understand this. Why would that Moshe do this? And the answer, of course, it's not a threat. And of course, it's the answer. What's the answer? The Moshe said, listen, if I tell you how Method B works, that the Geula itself can come through Churban, Tumah, right? Yisurin. Then if I tell you guys, then everybody's going to know, all the Malachim. And especially the Sultan. Now, I created the Sultan. He's a great Makatre. He's a great prosecuting attorney, right? So right now, he's got it. What he thinks is that, he can do whatever he wants to Klal Yisrael, prosecute their sins, and that's the end of redemption. Because Satan doesn't want the world redeemed, because we know, in Chad Gadya, that in what's redeemed, he's finished. So if I tell you that this itself, Yisurin and Tumah and Churban, is the way itself to Geula when they're not doing mitzvahs and tshuva, guess what? He's not going to prosecute them anymore. He's going to say, hey, I'm fighting against myself. Because this also is a path to redemption. So I can't tell you that, because it's going to be more the job of the Sultan where he will cease the Kitrugim. You see? He's going to say, hey, I'm not going to kill myself. It's my own destruction that I am doing if I bring him to Besdin. So therefore, and if that happens, if the Sultan stops, right, and therefore there is no Churban and all that kind of stuff, then guess what? Then they're not doing mitzvahs and tshuva, so the redemption won't happen that way. And also they're not going to do what? They're not going to be suffering Churban because the Sultan stopped it, and there won't be redemption that way. If that's the case, then the world goes back to Tohu Vavohu. It's finished. Mm-hmm. No purpose. You see? It's interesting. So he told them, you cannot know the way I work. Only I know, and in the end of days, you will know. But right now, in the ongoing process, you cannot know. Therefore, Method B cannot be revealed basically of how it works. But it is one of the greatest questions that everybody has. It's called the question of theodicy. Why do the righteous suffer and the evil people prosper? One of the greatest questions of all. And the Moshe cannot reveal that. And this is what's called the Method B. It also has another name that Ramchal uses. It's called the Anhogas HaYichud. Anhogas HaYichud is when the Moshe sees that you're not going to make it, then he institutes a certain series of actions that is beyond logic. It does not look like justice, and it makes no sense at all. This is the Anhogas HaYichud, you see. So that's a very important concept. So now we know a very important idea about Tisha B'Av. Guess what? Tisha B'Av will bring the Geula. Isn't that interesting? You know, of course we mourn. Because we would much rather have done it the other way, method A, which is mitzvahs and tshuva. Right? With that, we have a Beis HaMikdash. But since we didn't deserve that, the Moshe decided that there's not enough mitzvahs and tshuva in order to bring the Gula. Therefore, I must do it through the method of B, which is a whole different tumah, churban, and all that to bring the Gula itself. And this is what the Rosh Hashanah did. That's why it says that the Mashiach ben David is born on Tisha B'Av. Does that really mean he's born on Tisha B'Av? No. It means that the churban itself will bring the Mashiach ben David. It doesn't mean he's born on that day. It means that the fact that we have to go through churban and tumah, okay, that itself is a method of redemption, which is called, like I said, method B or Anhagas HaYichud, whatever, and therefore he will be born because of that day. That's what it really means. And there's a lot of ideas, and so on. This is a very great, a very important concept that no matter which way the Jews go, they must be involved in bringing the tikkun, which is the redemption itself. There's no way to get around it. Very important idea. I always have a problem with time because there's really so much to say. Who learned this? Who learned it the hard way? Avraham Avinu. What happened by Avraham Avinu? Imagine, he's 75 years old. He's an old man, even in those days, right? And all of a sudden, the Rebbe Shem appears to him and says, you know, you got to move. Imagine, so Avraham Avinu says, wait a minute, I'm 75 years old. You think I want to travel? Number one, hey, there's no money anywhere else. You know, I have all my relatives here, I have my father. You know, I have everybody here. I have my friends, everybody. You know, you want me, an old man, to go and pick myself up and to go to some place I never went to? Right? So, of course, Avraham Avinu says, no problem. That's Avraham Avinu, you know? So what does he do? He goes to Eretz Yisrael, and it's one of the greatest famines ever to hit the Middle East. We know that. It's one of the 10 great famines, you know? Can you imagine what he thought? This is the promised land? This land doesn't look too promising to me, right? So he can't believe this. But Avraham Avinu, the great Avraham Avinu, says nothing. And he therefore heads to Egypt because there's food in Egypt, right? Gets to Egypt. Then he realizes something. He says, wait a minute, you know, these guys are always looking for consorts to Paroi. He looks at his wife and he says, wow, you know, you're good. You look very good. If you tell him that I'm the husband, guess what? He's going to finish me off. He'll take you for one of his concubines or whatever, right? And so on. So he says to Sarah, you need to tell him that I'm a brother. As a brother, there's no competition here. No problem. Get to Egypt. Sarah says, my brother. Of course, and exactly what Avraham Avinu knew. They go take Sarah to the palace and so on. Okay. So imagine Avraham Avinu, his wife is gone. Finished. So he goes and checks into a motel. You know? He checks into a motel. And he's sitting there. And he says to himself, I can't believe what's going on. Not only is there no promised land, not only is there nothing that the Rebbe said to me, but not only that, I'm in a strange country. I don't know anybody here, right? I have no money, no friends. I'm broke. Nothing. Where is all the riches that the Rebbe I will bless you? And you know, he gave him all the brachas, which means don't worry, even though travel diminishes all that, the Rebbe promised him everything. He says, not only I have nothing, right? I have no wife. And not only have no wife, here's the real problem. Because the consort to a king can never go back to a layman because it's the disgrace to the king. So not only is Sarah gone, she's gone for good. Because even if he tires from her, who cares? She cannot go back to Avram because you cannot be married to a pharaoh and go back and marry a layman guy. Doesn't work that way. Not in Egypt anyway. So it's over with. It's gone. And then, of course, the Moshe makes a miracle, whatever. He stops everything up there, and they realize something going on here. And of course, they realize, hey, you know, go on, okay. They bring Sarah back, and everything is great. And not only everything is great, Paro gives him money. He piles him on the money because he realizes who's playing around with him. The question we have to ask is, Why did Hashem do this? Why? You know, you want to give a guy what you said, give it him. Why are you doing this? And the answer is a very important reason. Because the Hashem said, listen, you need to do the tikkun. You and all your descendants. I want to tell you something. You think it's going to be a bed of roses? No way. It's going to be a roller coaster. Yes, sometimes it's going to be up, and sometimes it's going to be down. It's a roller coaster. You know, sometimes you're going to look like you're in Gehenna, and you can't believe you're in Gehenna, and you have no idea what in the world you're doing there and what it's going to bring. That's method B. But the murder Zach that Avraham Avinu realized, because that's what the Moshe was saying. I want to tell you something, you know, I'm telling you what's going to happen to you and your descendants. It's a roller coaster. Some days you're going to be up, and other days you're going to be so far down, you won't know what hit you. Why? Because to do the tikkun requires one of these two methods. And method B is going to put you down. You see, this he's telling Avraham Avinu. But the incredible zach is this, is that because Avraham Avinu had to go through this method of tremendous yisur and anguish, sitting in the middle of a motel in Egypt, in the middle of nowhere, without his wife, never to see her again, that's exactly what brought him all the riches. Because Paro then said, here are back, and let me fill you with money. The goof of the Churban was the promise of the Moshe. That's the Hanogas HaYichud. That's what we don't realize, you see. We look at it as Churban. But what he had to teach Avram, which is the beginning of Klal Yisrael, and he's got to teach him, this is the instructions. This is what you need to know. And Avram Avinu learned the lesson that what the Moshe does, we don't know why, but we know two things. When we're up, that's great. But even when we're down, it's great. Doesn't make a difference. And many times, the bracha only comes when we're down. Because exactly why Parah gave him that, because, right, he took his wife and he was down. That's a murdig lesson that the Moshe had to teach. You know, many people say, well, he wanted to give him, he had to teach him bitochen. You have to trust God. It's much deeper than that. Of course he had to trust God, right? The message bitochen. And that's why all this stuff happened. It's much deeper than that. He had to understand that you're about to enter a journey, a tikkun, right? That's going to have two methods. It's going to look great sometime, and it's going to look absolutely beyond belief, horrendous another time. But don't worry, both of them will bring the Geula. That's what you have to know. And that's exactly what happened with Avram. He went back to Eretz Yisrael, he was laden with gold, you name it, whatever was in vogue in those days, riches, he had it. Very important concept. This then is really what Tisha B'Av is really all about. Tisha B'Av is really Churban, but remember, this Churban is method B. It's part of the Anhoga of Yichud. It is the second way to bring the Geula, even though it looks absolutely terrible. It's a very important idea to understand about Tisha B'Av. Why do I dwell on this? Because this is the principle of history, especially now. And I'm going to talk about that. I use this as a segue to understand current events. That what you think you see is not what you're looking at, really. I always use a mashal that the Moshe is the greatest chess player in history. You know, what does that mean? You know, a chess player, one of these grand masters, when they move a pawn, right? It's a simple pawn. There's no big deal with a pawn, right? They can see, this is the grandmaster, how many moves ahead do they know what's going to happen? Plan. 15 moves. It's astounding. When they move that pawn, they've already figured out any which thing you do. They immediately adjust. It's like a computer mind. The probabilities and so on, and what the outcome can be 15 moves ahead. That's pretty good. We can barely do 3, you see. But that's why they're grandmasters, you know, and so on, you know. In any case, but the Rasham laughs at this. The Rasham can move one pawn, one little event 1,000 years ago, and that event is critical for 1,000 years later. You can't possibly see this. And really, when you're looking at history, Jewish history, when you're looking at the end of time, this is what goes on. It's the great chess game of the Rasham. The trick is, of course, is to figure out. Can we figure him out? You know? Can we figure out what the Rasham is doing? And the answer probably is, to a certain extent, you know, I think the Moshe gets a kick out of the fact when somebody comes up with the right idea. Kaviyachol. Anyway, but it's great to be able to figure out what he's doing. Why? Because it's machazik emunah. You know when people have a chalisha and they say the Moshe is gone? He's gone. He's abandoned the Jews. They can't believe what's going on between Obama, Iran, Supreme Court, and all the Arabs and the quintet or whatever. All this is just the World War II, the Holocaust. Like, what is happening? All of it is method B. That's what I wanted to tell you, and that's the purpose of the beginning of the Shiur. The question then is, okay, can we have some type of an inkling of what's going on? And the answer is yes, we can. But it presupposes that you know of the existence of method B, right? And you have some idea of how things work. Now, let me tell you about something which happened this year and last year. I don't know how many people are familiar with this, but there's a concept called the blood moon. Blood moon. The blood moon. Yeah, what is a blood moon? For those who don't know, I don't know how many people have heard about it or know about it, and so on. The blood moon is simply a lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse is when the moon comes between the sun and the earth. When the earth comes between the sun and the moon, so therefore the moon goes in back of the earth and turns dark, obviously, because the sun cannot penetrate the earth. That's a lunar eclipse. That's rare. That happens like maybe once a year, maybe a year and a half, when there's a total lunar eclipse. Okay, I'm not going into simming what it means, so okay. Now, at some times, the moon turns red instead of dark. And that depends on the angle of the earth with the moon, because since the earth has an atmosphere, it bends light around and then shines it on the moon. Whatever, different things go on, and therefore the moon turns red. Interesting. It's a blood moon. That's rarer. What's even rarer is when there are 4 consecutive blood moons 6 months apart. That's extremely rare. Every 6 months there's a blood moon. Instead of a regular lunar eclipse, it's a blood moon. That's extremely rare. But that's called a tetrad. What's even rarer than that, and it happened only 3 times in 500 years, that's pretty rare, is when the blood moon happens, 4 of them, but one of them is on Pesach night, the next one is Sukkot night, then the following year, again Pesach night, and again Sukkot night. That's incredible. That only happened 3 times in 500 years. That's how rare that is. Well, guess what? It happened last year, Pesach and Sukkot, because those are Tesvav, which is, of course, the full moon. It happened just Pesach, and it's going to happen again Sukkot. Incredible. Now you can look at me and say, that's nice for astronomers, what does that have to do with us? And the answer to that is the following. When did it happen? That is the question. When? Well, the first time it happened, that's recorded basically, is 1492. What happened in 1492? Columbus discovered America. What's important about that? Because remember, we are going through Golus. We are going through the Golus of Edom. Edom, the one was, so what is the Golus of Edom? It started with Esau, and then there's Esau. Who Edom is Edom? Edom, the Gemara says, became Rome, Roimi, and Rome became Christianity. And Christianity is Western civilization. So Western civilization is really Rome, Edom, Esau. And this is the last real Golus. Almost, but it's basically the last one. Okay. So this concept of Christianity as the final Golus has levels. When this Columbus discovered America, in Europe it was terrible for the Jews. At that time, you're talking about 1492, they had been going through what's called the Inquisition, the Crusades. And the Crusades were killing hundreds of thousands of Jews. The Inquisition in Spain, and spread to all Christian nations ultimately. Even in America, you had the Inquisition and so on, you know? It was terrible. So what the Moshe did is he mitigated, softened the Golos by discovering America. America is Golos, but what a difference. What a difference. So that's called to lighten up, to mitigate, to soften the Golos. That is a messianic advancement. When the Golos gets lighter, you know this is a messianic advancement. And that was 1492, and the blood moon happened then. 4 of them, the tetrad. The next time it happened was 1948. What happened? Israel. The state of Israel was founded. And in that year, there was a tetrad. 4 consecutive blood moons on the Yom Tovim. Incredible. That's a messianic advancement. The third time it happened was 1967. We got Jerusalem back, right? It's incredible. Every time it happens, right, there's every time the blood moon happens, there's a messianic advancement. Well, guess what? It's happening now. Now. So if it's true to form, something is going to happen. Now, the ones who realized this, who brought it out to everybody's attention, was the fundamentalist Christians. They're going wild with this stuff, you know? These guys are always into, the Messiah, as they say. And there are guys out there, they realize this, and they say that something incredible is going to happen for the Jews. Even they're already into that, you see. So therefore, nobody knows what, right? But they believe that something incredible is going to happen for the Jews. Now, the last blood moon of the tetrad is Sukkot. So it's interesting to know what's going to happen. Anyway, now, you're going to say, that's very interesting historically and it's astronomically. But is there a Jewish source for this? That's the question. Because we're Jews, right? We like when the Torah says something about us, right? Not just astronomers. You know what I'm saying? And the answer is, yes, there is. If you look at Yoel, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Dalet, here's what it says. Look it up. Here's what it says. It says that the Rebbeinu Shem says, Yoel is saying in the name of God, that I will blot out the sun. The Rebbeinu Shem is saying this. I will blot out the sun. And by the way, there was a lunar eclipse, if I remember correctly, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. A solar eclipse on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So there you are. I will blot out the sun. Then the Rebbeinu Shem says, Yoel says, and I will turn the moon to blood. Wow. That's a blood moon, before the great and awesome day, which is the Gula. There it is. The Pasuk in Yoel. You see. And that's mamish what's happening. Now, besides that, I don't think the other blood moons had also this. That this Sukkot is Motzoi Shemitah. And the Gemara in Megillah says, Omar Rava, that in Motzoi Shemitah, Mashiach comes. And we have Motzoi Shemitah coming up in 3 months, or whatever, right? Which is incredible. And there are many people that hold that this Shemitah, or Motzoi Shemitah, is Yovel. And Yovel will cross him draw b'chol haaretz, freedom, you see. So what we're looking at is something which is astounding. That based on the pasuk, based on what's happening, something awesome seems to be in the works. Fascinating. So I just wanted to tell you that. And now let's see, is something happening that we can figure out? Yes, there is something that is astounding of what is happening.
These are full.
Yeah, I know. Rabbi Gold, how much time do I really have? What was that? As much as I want?
He's right behind
I hope you guys have something going until 2 a.m. That's it. It's a lot of stuff.
With you.
What?
Here with you. Back
With you.
Keep going.
Okay. What is happening now? It had no rhyme or reason. It looks like everybody went crazy and so on. I had mentioned last time, again, I'm not sure, but it's a critical understanding of what's going on. It's in many ways, it's a hakdama, which I think I said last year. But it needs to be repeated because it's part of the divine plan. The Satan has a relationship with all Jews. What does that mean? That when a Jew does a mitzvah, he brings down a certain Kedusha. We know that. The problem is that if he does an Avera, so the Satan is makatre, prosecutes, and he's able to take the Kedusha of the Jew for himself, and he grows in incredible might. The Satan is the only malach that can grow. He can grow or diminish based on the fact of what the Jews are doing. If they're doing mitzvahs, then the Kedusha goes to him, to the Jews, and he becomes diminished because he doesn't have enough Kedusha to survive. Because everything needs what's called Kedusha, holiness, or hashpah, or whatever. So if the Jew does the mitzvah, then the Jews take the Kedusha, and the Satan diminishes. If all the Jews do all the mitzvahs, the Satan dies. Literally dies. Because he starves to death. Okay. If the Jew sins, then the Satan is unique from that Kedusha, and he grows enormously. If they do more sinning, he grows greater and greater. But the problem is, as he grows, the Jews diminish themselves, you see. Then they are subject to a great deal of tsaros, which, remember, in its backhanded way, is another way to bring the gula without getting into that. The problem is when the Satan grows, it's bad news for the Jews. Okay, I can illustrate that. Let me give an example. Okay. When the Satan grows in might because of our sins, what happened in the first Beis HaMikdash? 2,500 years ago, the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. What happened? What happened was the Shekhinah left. So the question is, where did he go? Where does the Shekhinah go? What, back home? No. The rule is that if we lose something, then it's a midah keneged midah, then the Satan is able to take from what we had. It's a midah keneged midah. You don't want the Shekhinah, he'll take it. The question is, of course, what does he do with the Shekhinah? What does he want to do? Go to Shiur and daven and palace and film? No, obviously he's not going to do that. So what does he need that for? The idea is, and by the way, this is called Shechinta B'Golusa. What the Shechinah in Golus means, which we learn out from Sukkim, is that the Satan is able to yoinek, nourish, or the divine presence itself, midah keneged midah, measure for measure. The problem is that when he's yoinek from the Shekhinah, then what happens is major religions pop out. Because we lose our ability to access the vision of God, the insights of who God is, and therefore he gains that, and he gives to the Ummah Ha'olam their understanding of God, which is usually tries to usurp Judaism. What does that mean? For instance, the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed thousands of years ago, 2,500 years ago. Okay, therefore we know that the Shekhinah left, and we lost many things, the war and so on, but the Satan was Yoneh, and therefore, you know that when the 100-year period of the first destruction of the first temple, right? Do you know that most of the major religions of the world was founded? Buddhism, 700 million Buddhists. Confucius, the religion of China. Lao Tzu, or Taoism, okay? All that. Not only that, that's when science began, Greek philosophy, Aristotle, Plato, Pythagoras, and so on. All these people lived at the time of the Churban Bayis Rishon. The question is, what's going on here? Where do they get this stuff from? And not only that, but Rome became a republic in 525 BCE, which is also right around the time of the Churban Bayis Rishon. What does that mean? What it means is this: when the Jews are in control of themselves, when they do mitzvahs, they have access to two incredible gifts. Because that's what the Shekhinah has. It's called Tiferes, beauty, and Oiz, might. The Shekhinah has Tiferes, which really is Sphira, and Oiz, which is Malchus, and so on. They have Tiferes and Oiz. What is Tiferes and Oiz? Tiferes is beauty, it's Chochmah, incredible wisdom, Okay? That's chokhmah, beauty, wisdom. Ois is might, power, hatzlacha, success, potency. Jews have that, you see. But when they lose it, then the Tiferes and Ois goes to the sun. Where do we see that? We daven that in the morning, right? Oite Yisrael b'Sephora. He crowns, right, Yisrael in beauty, the Sephora's beauty, right? Oize Yisrael b'Gvura. He girds them with strength. That's the Tiferes and Ois. The problem is, when we lose that, he gets it. So therefore, the chokhmah of the religions and the insight of philosophy to the Greeks, that's our Tiferes. That's our stuff, right? And the birth of Rome is the ois, is the might that's also to destroy the second temple. They got out Tiferes and Ois. In fact, it's a posik in Echo. Echo says that. Not directly, but now you understand what it is. Echo says, Soreh u'malkeh ba'goyim. Her princes and her kings are in Goyim, among the Goyim. Right? That's the Ois. It went to the Goyim. Ain't Torah. There's no Torah. There's no Chokhmah of the Torah anymore. That went to the Greeks. Right? The Gam Nevi'el Lemotzu Chazoin, and even the Nevi'im don't see any Chazoin mi Hashem. Right? That's the religions of the East. Because they see the Chazoin, that's their meditative understandings. All of it went to different parties. That's our Tiferes and Ois. And they have that, you see. So when the Satan derives the Unika from the Shekhinah, major religions come out, Chokhmah and Ois. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. What happens with the second Beis HaMikdash? Same thing. We would expect, the formula now, is that there's a Siluk Shekhinah, if the Shekhinah is gone, right, what should come out? A new religion. What religion? Christianity. You don't realize something. Christianity is really Judaism on its head. What does that mean? You know, there are many religions, but they have nothing to do with Judaism, right? Christianity is what's called the Moshe Kapoya. It's the opposite of Judaism. What does that mean? We say that we have the Torah. They say they have the Torah, the New Testament. We say that we are Beis Yisrael. They say they are Beis Yisrael. That's what they say. We say that we have the Mashiach. They say they have the Mashiach. Right? It's a Geneva. It's a Gzela. In fact, even the Pope was a yarmulke. They just can't get away from stopping to rob us. Everything they do is somehow based on something Judaic. You see. And that's what it is. Where did it come from? Chub Ma'asheni. We lost the Shekhinah and it went to the Goyim. The amazing thing is this. Why did we lose the second Beis HaMikdash? Where? Why? Because of Sinas Chinam, hatred. That's why we lost. Okay? Sinas Chinam and Lashon Hara. Right? So Mida Keneged Mida. You destroyed the Beis HaMikdash because of tremendous hatred and Lashon Hara. I am going to bring the Kitra. I'm going to bring an enemy that will destroy you with Sinas Chinam and Lashon Hara. What is that? The New Testament. The New Testament is filled with unbelievable Lashon Hara and Moitzi Shema against the Jews. You can't believe what the New Testament calls the Jews, and so on. So, it's Mida Keneged Mida. We destroyed the bias because of Sinas Chinam and Lashon Hara. They're destroying us with their New Testament that gives the lie that we are whatever, thieves and a den of... I don't even want to go into what they say. And that's mamash what's killing us. That's what they believe. That's a Mida Keneged Mida. So it comes out that Christianity is what? Is really Judaism on its head. Actually, what Christianity is, if you want to know essentially what it is paganism with a Jewish veneer. That's what Christianity is. You know, it's like you ever see a window dressing? You know? Christianity, if you go into the window of Christianity, inside the shop, it's all pagan. It's all idolatry. All their rituals are, in many ways, pagan. The Trinity, I don't want to go into that stuff, you know, transubstantiation, what a nonsense they have and so on, right? But when you look at the outside, hey, it's Judaism. You know, it believes in a Messiah, right? It believes in a Mashiach, right? It believes in basically a God. Okay, he's got a kid. Okay, he's got a kid, you know. He's got nachas with kids, right? Ugly to say, right? But basically, it's paganism. Enormous amount of their right. The Trinity itself is pagan, and so on. Whatever. Anyway, so therefore, It's paganism with a Jewish veneer. But that's our Tiferes noise. Where do you think the Tiferes noise is? It's in Christianity. Did you ever walk by and look at that church? You tell me one shul that looks like Westminster Abbey, right? Or what do you call it? Or
St. Paul's.
What is this? It's like they've constructed magnificent churches. The simple church. I'm not talking about the Pentecostals, this kind of stuff. But the Roman Catholic Church, what they have is Malchus. That's our first noise. Yeah, that's really us in the hands of the Umasor. You see. Therefore, this has been going on. But the real thing that's going on is the last thing. You're talking about Tiferes and Oyes in the hands of Goyim. Remember, whatever we have, they get. If we lose, because that's the Kitrugim. Okay. The Zohar says that in the year 1240 English year, which is the year 5000, the Or Mashiach begins to come down. The Zohar says that. Why? Because the world was created in 6 days, so therefore the world will last 6,000 years. The year 5000 was the year 1240. It corresponds to Friday. Friday is Erev Shabbos. Therefore, as a hachona to Mashiach, it begins to come down. The Or Mashiach. The problem is, who gets it? What is it? So the Or Mashiach, what it really is like a magnifying glass. If you put it on any chokhmah, you can see immediately the panemius of the entire chokhmah. So if you put it in Judaism, you can see the panemius of Judaism, the mitzvahs. Kabbalah is the Or Pnimi on its surface. That's really what Kabbalah is. It's a me'ain the Or Mashiach, okay, but its surface. When the Mashiach comes, it's unbelievable what he's megala in terms of when you do a mitzvah, what does that have to do with the upper worlds and so on? In any case, so we know what the Or Mashiach is to us, Kabbalah. What happened? Did that happen in 1240? Yeah. The Zohar was discovered right after 1240. Okay, that's when the Zohar was discovered, and therefore that's our ability to access this Chokhmah, okay, the Or Mashiach, aka as Kabbalah, or tremendous pneumius. It has other manifestations also, which I'm not going to get into. But wait a minute, if we're getting this stuff, right, and we have Sinas Chinam and Lashon Hara and all this kind of stuff, and Averis, the Goyim will get it too. Because the Satan is yoinek from the Or Mashiach. What's the difference? He's yoinek from what? From the Shechina, so he can be yoinek from that Or too. Because we're getting it, he's getting it. So, but the question is, what is the Or Mashiach in the hands of the Satan, which he gives to the Goyim? And the answer to that is that it's science. What is science? Science isn't devil worship. What science simply is that magnifying glass, instead of being placed on mitzvahs and Torah, it is placed on teva, physics, universe. So automatically, when the Or Mashiach comes down, and when the Satan takes it, he gives it to the Goyim, which means automatically they can begin seeing the physical world in a whole different understanding. What is science? Science is nothing more than the recognition that all phenomenon or phenomena have internal structures. There's opinions to everything. If you're biology, there's DNA. If you're into the atom, it's called about quarks and subatomic particles. Whatever science looks at, it's always trying to understand the pneumius. That's messianic, believe it or not. So the incredible thing is that the Or Mashiach science is derived from the Or Mashiach, which is given to the Goyim. You see? But that's the astounding thing, is that without the Or Mashiach, they also have no science. Who lived in 1240, if that was the origin of science? And the answer is the individual who broke away from Aristotle and began the real scientific revolution called the scientific method, and that was a guy named Roger Bacon. He's the one who started the scientific method. And once they broke away from Aristotle to do experiments and so on, that's when science began to grow by leaps and bounds. Now, so all of a sudden there's a race. We're getting Kabbalistic studies, right? And it's beginning to grow. It's growing into you have the Zohar, the Bahia was before, and so on. And all of a sudden you're looking at Rabbi Yitzchak Sagino, and finally you get to the Ari. I mean, it's growing by leaps and bounds, and so on. On the other side, science is also growing, right? It's growing also tremendously, and so on. Until you get to the year 1740. 1740, a decision has to be made. Which way is that Or Mashiach going to go? There's a Kotzke Magid. The Kotzke Magid says the following, that there's going to be a tremendous hispashtus chokhmah, 1740, 1840, whatever. If we're Zoicha, we will get that incredible proliferation of wisdom. If we're not Zoicha, the Goyim will get it. What's he referring to? He's referring to this awe that comes down, that this, okay, either we get it, which means that our understanding of Torah would have been unbelievable had we accessed it. However, we didn't. They got it, primarily. Where do you see that? Because right before 1740, the father of modern science lived, Newton. Newton was Machadish. He changed science totally, in many ways. Okay? So therefore, Newton, who died in 1725 or 27, whatever, that was the beginning. What did we get? Instead of giving the Or Rishon, we got the greatest false Messiah who ever lived. Shabsai Tzvi. That's the Kidron. You see, that's the prosecution. You want the Or Mashiach? I'll give you an Or Mashiach. I'll give you shots. Shabsai Tzvi. I'll give you that. Let's see what you do with it. What a Kidron. It's unbelievable what the guy did. So they're getting real science, and we're getting Shabsai Tzvi. Terrible. You see, why? Because that's the switch between the Or Mashiach on us and the Or Mashiach to them. Now the question is, why does the Satan want to give the Goyim science? Because in the end, science is like a knife. In the hands of a surgeon, it does what? It cures. In the hands of a murderer, it kills. A knife is neutral. Why does he want to give, and that's what science is, it's a chokhmah, that's all. Why should the Satan want to give the world science? The answer is, because the greatest challenge to religion is science. Because only science can provide, at least it looks that way, an alternative understanding of the Bria. Therefore, atheism never happened until the advent of science. The world was never atheistic. They had all kinds of religions. It's never atheistic. Atheism is a machlo. Atheism is a phenomena that starts with science. Until finally you get to a guy like Darwin. Never without Darwin you can't be an apicurus. Because you didn't answer the question. How did life originate? And how do we explain the diversity of species? There's 100 million species according to scientists. You know what 100 million that are different. It's incredible. There are 6,000 different species of ants. And if you think that's good, okay, beetles. Beetles. You ever look at a beetle? There are 300,000 species of beetles. In fact, there was a famous entomologist, the guy who studies insects. He says, I can't believe it. He said, God must have loved beetles. He just made so many of them. 300,000 species, it's like beyond belief of beetles. There are thousands each mosquitoes. There's thousands of species of mosquitoes. It's just beyond belief what there are, and so on. Okay. In any case, therefore science by them is growing by leaps and bounds. Why? Because the Or Mashiach is descending in incredible acceleration. That's what's happening. Because as we get closer to 1990 is Friday noon, Chatzois, when the sun begins to set, never to rise again. So the Or Mashiach is coming down in unbelievable intensity. And I said, why does the Satan want to give them science? Because he wants to make atheism. And he knows that's going to affect the Jews. He's not interested in giving them chokhmah, but he knows that science is the only way to counter belief in God, if you want to do it that way. Of course, science could be used to see the incredible godless of Borei. But if a guy he doesn't want to see that, he can use science to reject the Rebbeinu Shalom. And it's growing. And by 1990, what is going on is beyond belief. Why? Because the Or Mashiach is coming down with a speed you cannot believe. Why? Because 1990, which is really Tufshin Nun, it's really September 1989, there's an incredible intensity of that awe because it's noon. And that's when we begin to think of Cholent, you set up for Erev Shabbos, and so on. In fact, if you really want to understand what's going on, Every day, 7,500 journal articles are published. Every day. Do you know what 7,500 articles are published daily? Therefore, the sum total of human knowledge doubles every 5.5 years. You believe this? Beyond belief. But what is that? That's our Mashiach. The Goyim had to wait till the Mashiach to get their science. Because it's all ours. It's our Tveres and Ois. They don't have anything on their own. It's whatever the Satan's yoinik from us. You see. In any case, however, remember, all of this brings the Geula, and so on. Now, no, not there. Why am I telling you all this? Because the great news is the Satan is dying. Because the Jews, after 2,000 years, has suffered enough, and since that is a path to Geula, which fundamentally means that it takes back all the Kedusha the Jews gave the Satan. It takes it back to the side of Kedusha. And therefore, he's dying. It's astounding, isn't that? And therefore, the Geula is right around the corner. However, the Satan dying is not simple. He's not going to go down without a fight. Therefore, what the Satan does is several things. The first thing he did was called the Great Bluff. The Holocaust is the Great Bluff. What he did is he marshaled all the Goyim against the Jews. He killed them. Each nation was culpable in the Holocaust. England, they shut out Israel. You couldn't go to Israel. The white paper. America, Roosevelt, you couldn't get to America. He even turned around to St. Louis, and so on, right? You have England that shut out Israel. You had, forget about Germany, they're killing the Jews, right? Ukraine, everybody was involved in massacring the Jews. Why? The Satan doesn't really get anything about the death of a Jew. He only gets something out of the chatoim, the sins of the Jews. Because the Satan realized, if he can destroy enough Jews in a horrendous way, then what he can do is he can get the Jews to abandon God. Because they will say, where is God? How can he do this to us? And therefore, we don't want to take part anymore in mitzvahs. It's over with. And therefore, they're choite. And if they're choite, he eats. Yoinei. That's the matar. That's one of them. There are many other reasons for the Holocaust, but one of the ideas essential, it's the Satan's great strategy. But it didn't work, because there are Jews that refused, to give it up, and so on. So the Satan therefore goes into the second strategy. And the second strategy is called his guys. He sends his guys into the Jewish people to destroy the religion of the Jews. Who are they? The Erev Rav. The Erev Rav is one of the greatest enemies of Israel. Why? Because what is an Erev Rav? An Erev Rav is a guy that believes that the greatness of the Jews is not Torah. It's gefilte fish. You didn't realize that, huh? Gefilte fish. It's knedlach. It's Jewish culture. He said, of course the Bible is great literature, and so is Shakespeare. You see, the Erev Rav destroys the supremacy of Torah as the real bond between the Jew and God. That's what he does. We're like every other nation. And all of a sudden, these are the Erev Rav. Who are the Erev Rav? The Erev Rav is who? In America, it's the Reformed, the Conservative, and the Reconstructionists. They've destroyed Judaism in America. In Israel, it's the Maskilim, it's Labour, and even Likud. All these guys that are trying to destroy the Torah, these guys are Erev Rav. That's what an Erev Rav is. So the Satan sends them into the Jewish people. In fact, Israel is given, and that happened in 1948. Right after the Holocaust, when he realized it wasn't happening, he sends his guys. 1948, right? The Jewish state is founded by who? By guys that want to destroy religion. You see, because these guys are fry, they're not religious, so they want to destroy religion because they realize that the guys who are religious will not vote for them. Because they know the British are going to leave, and when the British leave, they want to be in charge. And the ones who are going to put them, it's not the religious. So for political reasons, they're interested in destroying Judaism. That's really what's happening, and so on. In any case, they're the Erev Rav. Why is the Erev Rav so powerful? And the answer to that is because they are like a cancer. Why is cancer so powerful? Because the body does not look at a tumor, right, as foreign. It thinks the tumor itself, and therefore will not destroy it. The Erev Rav are Jews. They're not Goyim. They're not Catholic missionaries. They're Jews. People do not think that a Jew will destroy them. He's a Jewish guy. What are you talking about? Right? But they don't realize when a guy comes over to you and says, forget the Torah. We don't need any more. I'm an Israeli. Right? That's now replaced the Torah. He's a tumor because you don't see him as an enemy. He's Jewish. He'll never do this to me. You see? Therefore, the Erev Rav has what's called credibility. This is their problem. That's why they're the greatest enemy of all. They have absolute credibility to you. So you don't recognize that they're really out to destroy you. Do they really want to destroy you? No. And I want to tell you something. The Erev Rav are not people who are not religious. No. They're Tinuk Shenishba. The Erev Rav are the leaders. They are the Erev Rav, not the Jews. It's Rachmanis on the Jews, that they listen to these leaders. But it is the leaders of these people that know what they're doing that want to destroy the religion. And that's what he does. But that fails. So therefore the Satan who's dying needs to go into a third mode, and the only way to survive is he needs Kedusha from some other place. He needs an ally. Who is the ally? Yishmael. The Maral says the following, that the only one who can be unique straight from God is Yishmael, besides the Jews. Okay, although the Jew can bring a tikkun to the Bria, Yishmael can't, but he can derive sustenance not through the Satan. All the nations of the world need the Satan. The Jew, however, the Yishmael can derive it straight. Why? Because of what Avram Avinu did. Lu Yishmael yichli lefanecha, alavai Yishmael should live before you. And what that meant was Yishmael should derive the ability, okay, to flourish and survive from the Rebbeinu Shalom himself. That was Avram Avinu's tefillah. Therefore, the Satan goes over to the Malach of Yishmael, and he says, "Hey guys, I need you. I need your koyach." You see, that's what he says. So the Malach of Yishmael says, "No problem. I will help you out because I got my own stuff without you." You see. Sounds great. But then the Malach of Yishmael says to the Satan, he says, wait a minute. There's a deal here. There's a quid pro quo, as they say. You want my stuff? No problem. But here's the deal. Until now, who is your Bechor? Who is your elect? Edom, Rome, Christianity, America, Europe, the West. I want my guys to be the top. I want my guys to replace your guys as the supreme nation. You see, that's the deal. And the Satan said, fine. Okay? And all of a sudden, right after Chatzos, Tavshin Nun, 1990, 1989, 1990, is the first Intifada. And all of a sudden you see guys walking around in bed sheets. Wherever they are. They're taking over Europe. You see, they're taking over the whole world. And not only that, what's called the coup de grace, the ultimate destruction, is the Satan convinces America to put in a Muslim, Obama. The reason why Obama is the president of the United States, because he is a Muslim, really he's a Muslim. And his job, he has several jobs. One is to destroy the United States, of which he's doing an eminent job. It's incredible what the man has done. Incredible. And that's his job. You know, that's his job. You know, he should be given the Nobel Prize for this, to destroy America. You see, but that's what his job is. But it's more than that. His job is to sponsor, to elevate and support the Arabs, or really the Muslims. That's his job, because that's the deal. The son's dying. He's got Yishmael. And all of a sudden, what does he have to do? So therefore, what Obama has to do is basically several things. First thing he has to do is destroy America, of which he's doing an elegant, an admirable job. That's the first thing. The second thing he has to do is support the Palestinians, the Arabs against Israel. He's a Sunni Israel, really. I don't care what he says. He knows the Jews are going to falter under the Arabs. He knows what's going to happen. Yet he'll never once, neither he or Bush even, never sat down with Abbas and said, excuse me, what are you doing? You're breaking what's called Oslo. You're destroying it. This is ridiculous. He's never once put them on the carpet and said, how do you do this? Talk about a double standard, because that's his job, is to elevate Abbas. It's incredible. Even Morsi in Egypt, who is a Muslim, but he's the real Muslim. Forget about the secular Muslims. He's a Lishmonik. Why? He's Sharia law. He's the Muslim Brotherhood. That's real Islam, right? He was mad when they kicked out Morsi. Are you out of your mind? Morsi was crazy. He's an idiot, the guy. What he should have done is consolidate his power in Egypt, then he should have moved in. Instead, the Yukel, what does he do? The first 2-3 months, he's already trying to destroy Egypt. So, of course, they say, excuse me, what are you doing? But, of course, Dubois should make sure, because, of course, that he's going to do that. But what kind of a chacham does that? First, consolidate your power, and then take over Egypt with Sharia law. No, he didn't do that. He couldn't wait. But in any case, he's actually mad that they threw out Morsi. Morsi's destroying Egypt because he's a Muslim, right? But there's one more thing he has to do. Iran. Let's begin to understand what is going on. Now you have this background. Remember, the Sultan is dying, but there's something else that's going on here. What is going on? The Sultan looks around, and remember, Yishmael takes its own Kedusha directly from the Rebbeinu, and that's why they're called Yishmael. But the problem is they're running out of it also. Guess what? They're running out of the goods. They're dying too. What do you see there? Take a look. Every nation state of Arabs is dying. Libya is finished. Egypt is having terrible problems with ISIS in Sinai. And they're still in dread. They haven't recovered their economy. Syria is dead. Yemen is dead. Right? Iraq is dead. Lebanon is tottering. Jordan is tottering. Even Afghanistan is dead. It's unbelievable. It's like, whatever happened to the Middle East? And the answer is because Yishmael is running out of Kedusha. And guess what? The Sultan's gone wild. It's gone wild. He says, I finally got an ally, and they themselves are botching up the job. They don't have any Kedusha left. He goes wild, you see. So I had mentioned last time, there's a medrash that says the following, that, you know how you know we're close to the Gula? What's happening is the Sultan is dying and Yishmael is dying. And not only that, one of the things that show you they're dying is, guess what? Israel has discovered oil and gas. They're about to be a major exporter. They don't need the Arabs anymore. They don't need any of this stuff. In fact, politically, they're going to grow very strong because every oil and gas talks, right? So all of a sudden, everybody's going to what? Toady up right to Israel. So that's another death knell of the Arabs, that you don't even need them anymore. Israel is going to be with the Leviathan field and all that. That's a major exporter of gas and oil. Unbelievable. You see. So therefore the world is not even going to look at these guys anymore, slowly. In any case, therefore the Sultan is going wild, and Yishmael is going wild. And they realize that their days are over, it's coming to an end. Now I want to tell you something which is very important. Because Yishmael realized that it's ending, then Yishmael has to bend down, so to speak, and energize an incredible scheme to resurrect itself. It's what's called the death throes of Yishmael. Who is that? That's ISIS. ISIS is a phenomena that is bizarre even to Muslims. Muslims don't go around beheading people. They don't put people in cages and drown all of them and videotape it. But it's not Islam. I mean, Islam is pretty bad, but this is the lowest form of murder that you've ever seen. And people are shocked at their behavior. You see, what's happening? Because what ISIS is the death throes of Yishmael. You don't realize that. You think, ISIS, no, it is the death row of actually, and not only that, but that itself, remember, that's the Chum. And they want to declare a caliphate, which is exactly, they're so desperate to get back their power that they want to become a caliphate. But there's something interesting in all of this that is happening. What is that? When the Jews stood by Kriya Samsov, the Rebbe said something highly unusual. What did he say? He said, Hisyatzvu uru'u, stand back and watch. It's Yeshua Hashem, the salvation of God. Wow, God doesn't do that. Usually we have to engage in war and then he gives us victory. We don't have what God says, don't worry, just stand back, watch what I'm about to do, right? It's like it's all of a sudden you're in the Yankee Stadium, watch how I play ball. Huh? That's an incredible display of Kedusha, of Yichud, of Ha'ora. Why? And then it says, Hashem Yilochem Lochem. God will fight for you. You don't have to do anything. V'atem tachvishon. Be silent. What does all this mean? Because when it comes to the end, the Jews have enough schus where the Baruch can openly display that he is in charge. Do you notice what's happening in the Arab world? Israel doesn't have to do anything. They just have to protect their borders. They can just, like ISIS is the best thing that ever happened to them. ISIS is killing all the Arabs. They butcher the Sunnis, and they certainly butcher the Shiites. It's unbelievable. The Arabs are killing Arabs, left and right. Egypt is killing the ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Then they go into Gaza and rip out all the houses. It's unbelievable, It's like Israel cannot pay them enough to do this. What is this? You don't have to do anything. Watch. I'm going to have these guys turn against each other and butcher themselves. What are you doing? Hey, the Shiite, okay, so he believes that the son-in-law, the wrong guy took over, it's a machlokas. Who had to be Yerush, right? Was it the son of Muhammad or whatever? Or was it son-in-law? Or the brother-in-law? Whatever. Whatever. I'm sorry if I'm not up to date in the latest Islam, But anyway, okay, so therefore you got to butcher each other? What is this? Is the fought Muhammad, you fought believe Muhammad and Sharia law? Because they're crazy. Does this justify butchering everybody, every Muslim? Of course not. But what the Rebbe has done is says, hey, Hashem Yilochem Lachem. You just sit here, and just protect your borders. I'll wipe them out. That's exactly what he's doing. Every nation state is being wiped out, and ISIS and Al-Qaeda, really, I say, they're killing all the Arabs. It's unbelievable what's going on, and so on. Okay, this is a very important nikuda. It means we're at the end. That's what it means, and that's why it's happening. Because the Jews have enough schus where now God can openly destroy without us doing anything, which is incredible. That's a very important concept. Okay, so we are now at this stage. Just like you see ISIS destroying Muslims, killing Muslims, right? The Moshe is going to pull off something incredible. He's going to have Muslims kill Christians. He's going to have Yishmael destroy Edom. And Edom will destroy Yishmael, and we're just going to sit back and watch. It's another Hashem Yilochem Lochem. You see, where? Because that's what's happening. They don't realize what they're doing. There's a medrash that says, it's a Yalkut, in Yeshaya, 499. It says the following. It says, in the end of days, Paras, Persia, today's Iran, is going to incite a war against Edom. Okay? Not only that, they incite a war against Arabia. Persia will begin to destroy Arabia. They're going to run to Edom. Physique Council, and then it says they're going to begin to destroy the world. This is Poras. And then all of a sudden the Baskel comes out and says, don't worry, Higia Zman Geulaschem. The time of your redemption has arrived. It's a Baskel. It means the last great war is Iran trying to destroy Edom. Amazing. However, this needs a whole setup. What happens? And there's another medrash, Pirkei Rebbe Eliezer, that says the following. It says, "B'achras hayomim," in the end of days, Yishmael is going to commit 3 acts of terror against the world. First 2 acts, whatever. The third act is they're going to commit an act of terror against the great city of Rome. Who's that? There is no Rome. Rome is the United States, the greatest power. And the great city of Rome is New York. What is that? The World Trade Centers. That's what they're going to do. Therefore, they're going to commit an act of terror against Edom. That's the beginning. And then it says, is Mishom Yitzmach ben David. The Mashiach ben David will sprout. Whenever it says sprout, it doesn't mean ben David, it means Mashiach ben Yosef, because he starts it off. So it says, so Mashiach ben Yosef is going to watch. And it says, as Yishmael tries to destroy Edom, and Edom tries to destroy Yishmael, what does that sound like? Hashem Yilochem Lochem. Same thing. It's a clash of civilizations. And then it says, Umishom Yovel Eretz Yisrael. He will come to Eretz Yisrael. Which is interesting. That sounds like the Mashiach is born in America. Anyway, without getting into that, because he comes from there. But what I want to bring out is, this is another Hashem Yilochem Lochem. It's another one. Where the Moshe says, hey, just stand back. Watch as they take each other out. So right now he's having Yishmael take out Yishmael. You see? But eventually they're going to try to take out the West, which is exactly what ISIS wants to do, and so on. However, there's a problem here. What's the problem? Poras? Give me a break. They can't take out Edom. Come on. We're talking about the greatest power in the world. Europe, America. Come on. So what's the Moshe do? So don't worry. I will make sure that Persia will have the bombs. That's why they must become nuclear. Because without being nuclear, they cannot take out anybody. You see. There you see what's happening. That Iran is going to become nuclear. But something happened which was astounding in order to prepare what's about to happen. Which Ishmael takes out Edom. And by the way, the same clash of civilization between Edom and Ishmael is also at the end of Yoel. Perek Dalet, at the end, where it says openly. And there's a whole Malbim that talks about Ishmael destroying Edom and Edom destroying Ishmael. It's a whole Malbim. But anyway, they're going to take each other out because, again, it's nothing more than Hisyatzvuru, stand back and watch. I will take out your enemies. You don't have to do anything because the time has arrived. But here's the problem. The problem is Yishmael can't do anything. Poras can't do anything against Edom. Of course not. You're talking about the United States, the most powerful army in the world. How does it work? Well, so the savior of Yishmael is Obama. He's the savior because he's a Muslim. Guess what? Obama does something that is absolute lunacy. Lunacy. It's astounding. You go to a nation that is the greatest sponsor of global terrorism in the world. Everyone knows that, right? It's incredible, right? Wherever you look about terrorism, it's Iran. And you go and give them the ability to be nuclear. But I want to tell you something. That deal with Iran, I'm not worried about the breakout time. Because now Iran is going to take a year to get a bomb instead of a month or 2. Forget about that. That's nonsense. And if they're smart, they'll abide by the agreement. Why? Because in 10 years, what the U.S. has done is they have legitimatized Iran to be a nuclear power. And it's legal. You can't do anything anymore because the United States, that in return for the 10 years that you won't do anything, you can now develop whatever you want. No more handcuffs. That's insane. It's literally like putting a gun in the hand of a murderer and saying, okay, for 10 years you can't use it. After 10 years you can blow us all away. Does this make sense? Of course not. But one of the main jobs of Obama, he's a Muslim. And therefore, he needs to empower the Poras. Why? Because once Persia has the bomb, they're developing the missiles. There wasn't even a deal to stop the missiles, which is incredible, right? All they need is the missile and the bomb, and they can threaten the West. They can say, France, hey, you bother us, you don't stop this, we're going to blow up Paris. We'll just send a nuclear warhead. You think we'll send 4 nuclear warheads. What's the problem here? You can't stop that. They're going to, and Europe, of course, Europe isn't going to like that. Europe is going to capitulate immediately because that's what Europe is. Okay, and even the U.S. can't deal with a nuclear power that threatens you. And remember one thing: Iran wants to destroy the world because they believe, Shiites believe, that the 12th Imam, who is their Messiah, can only come after the world is destroyed. So Churban is the only way to bring the Gula. It's not funny, I wonder if they took that from Yidden. Because through Churban you can bring the Gula and whatever. But they really want to destroy everything. You see? So what has happened? So it's incredible what's happened. Iran is now legitimately, they can't do much. But give them 10 years, they can build as many H-bombs as they want. Then the whole world will be topsy-turvy. And then you see the prophetic statements of the Yalkut come true. It's astounding. So what you've seen, which is interesting, and I believe this is one of the concepts of the blood moon. Until now, we could say, when's it going to happen? When is Mashiach going to come? Guess what? The countdown has begun. We're no longer waiting years and years. There's the countdown. What's the countdown? The countdown is ISIS, but more important, Iran. That once Iran goes nuclear, with the blessings of the world, they are going to threaten, right? And that is the last war that the Mashiach is going to watch. And not only that, Iran is not only going to do their own threat, they are going to sponsor Hezbollah, Hamas. All of these guys are going to be under the umbrella of Iran. So what are they going to do? They're going to war with Israel. That's what's going to happen. Of course, Israel is going to have to war with them eventually. And as a result of that, it's interesting. In that war, I believe that in that war with the Arabs against Israel, what's going to happen is that Israel will evict all the Arabs. They have to, for survival. And then incredibly, al-Qateva, all the Arabs will be thrown out of Israel for their own survival. Because I believe ultimately the Arabs will side. This is the last attempted jihad. We finally can do it. We've got Iran that's nuclear. We got Hezbollah, Hamas, right? And ISIS and Al-Qaeda. We got all these guys. Let's do it once and for all. Because they realize that if they don't do it, they'll never have Israel. And Israel will then engage in a war and evict the Arabs out. That, I think, is what's going to happen. However, wait a minute. What about the rest of the world? Well, the rest of the world, what do they care? Iran is threatening them. They're going to side with Israel. You see, so Israel will be under the umbrella of the West. But the problem is this. Wait a minute. Edom is very powerful. Edom has a great deal of schusim. So even though the countdown has begun, 10, 9, 8, until Iran gets the bomb. And then there can be a massive attempt, of course, to threaten the West. But it's very hard to take out Edom. Because Edom has not only power, but what Edom has also is have tremendous chus. Because the goddess of America has been tremendous for the Jews. They've been able to learn Torah, everything. So what happens? So the Rebbe has to weaken Edom. He has to weaken Edom, the schus of Edom, but at the same time not weaken the Arabs. How do you do that? How do you weaken the U.S. or the West so that the Arabs can war with them, or at least conduct a credible, terror campaign, but at the same time not weaken Ishmael? It's interesting what the Rebbe does. It's astounding to watch what he does. You know what he did? Supreme Court. He got America to legalize and legitimatize same-gender marriage. Wow, what a corruption. What a kidrug. Even the Sultan can't believe what just happened. Why don't you believe what happened? Because he knows the score. This can't go on. They just did what the world was destroyed for. The Mabul, right? One of the major reasons of the Mabul was Shinoi Azmin. That's what was going on. And the Moshe was not going to tolerate that because he's not going to allow something to destroy civilization. The problem is America is the leader of the world. It's not like some Zimbabwe just decided to monitor this stuff. You talk about the United States has mocked, legalized it, legitimatized it. More than that, if you don't allow same-sex marriages and so on, if you don't let them be rebbis in your yeshiva, rabbonim in your shuls, right? If you don't hire them as teachers and all that, if you don't bake a cake when two guys want to get married, all this kind of stuff, which is going on in America, you don't realize the government is going to remove money that they give you because you are discriminating. You believe this? Not only have these guys legitimatized, but they are now, you are looked at as racist and you are discriminatory if you discriminate against them. Do you believe this stuff? And not only that, they have now, what they have done is America's the world leader. So not only is America now totally in this, but the rest of the world, of course, is going to follow. What's the shiny anymore? In fact, even what's his name, Yalon, he's crazy. Yalon said, it's too bad. Maybe we should do the same thing also. Is he out of his mind? And so on. This is the era of Rav. So America, therefore, has enormously reduced their schos. It's even possible that Bolshevik is going to incredibly admonish America. Really punish them on the way. But there's no question that they've reduced enormously their schos. But it's interesting. What about the Arabs? The Arabs kill homosexuals. This doesn't do anything for them. On the contrary, when you weigh Yishmael against Edom, Yishmael wins. Because they don't do any of this stuff. That's one reason why they hate America, because they hold America corrupts the world. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing that what's tremendous choiv for America is a schus for Yishmael. You see, that's going to elevate ISIS and elevate Yishmael, and it's going to murder, descend America, which is bad news for America. But that's in order to allow all the things that is going to happen. Basically, what's happening? We are seeing really the end of days. It's the countdown. It's really what it is. It's no longer when's the Mashiach going to come? 50 years, 80 years? No. He's going to come as soon as Iran, because that's what the Medrash says. The Rebbeinu Shem says, Higia Zman Gulaschem. The time of your redemption has arrived. This is it. You see? And Obama, because it's insane what he did, you see. No normal guy would do this. It's abnormal. But Obama actually initiated the countdown, because that's really his job. So when you look at all this, what's happening, it's incredible to watch the chess game. And you begin to realize all of this ties in. It ties in ultimately to the end. Because this is really what the Russian wants to do. He wants to end the nightmare of the Ummah Ha'olam. He wants to end the nightmare of Yishmael. He wants to end, unfortunately, because they're for Jews, he wants to ultimately end the nightmare of Erev Rav. They're Jews, so Russian will deal with them differently. But he wants to end the Golus, as you see, and the incredible thing is that it begins in the middle of a blood moon. It's what we see clearly is the countdown. What's more messianic than a countdown? I ask you. It's much more messianic, right, than Columbus coming to America. More messianic than the state of Israel, right? It's more messianic than Jerusalem. It's the countdown to the Mashiach. What is greater a countdown? And it has begun now. And astoundingly, they've legitimatized all of it. Now, there's a lot of stuff I've skipped, but what I tried to do is bring you an entire picture of what Tisha B'Av really is. Method B, why it can't be revealed, and so on. The whole concept of how it plays into today's time and what happens now. And now, once you have this kind of interpretation, then you can begin to see other events, and you'll look at it and you see exactly how they fit. You see, so you have now been look at least some of the pawns that God's moving. Because why would we connect the Supreme Court to Yishmael? Why would you connect Iran to anything? So what's going on? But the truth is, it's all the same. It's the concept of the son dying, Shmuel dying. It's Obama trying to save Yishmael, you see, and trying to usher him, but he thinks he's trying to save them. I mean, not that he thinks, he doesn't even know what he's doing, really. But ultimately, like I told you, what God does is a mapecha. It looks like it doesn't mean anything, but meanwhile, now you understand why Obama's president. His presidency is not only just to destroy America, it's really to enliven and enable Yishmael to war with Edom, which is the exact opposite of what everybody thinks. It's an astounding concept how the Rebbe makes them absolute fools. And this has been repeated so many times through history. There's so many different examples that I could bring, that they're absolute fools. They made the wrong mistake, and then actually the actions that they've taken ultimately has destroyed them, because that's what the Moshe does. And in the end, okay, who is the one who brings the Mashiach? Of course we do. But really, it's a Satan. He does it. That's why he's called Uksil. He's a fool. Because his kitrugim, his deals, everything, ultimately is so maneuvered that it brings the Mashiach. And that is why, and I'll end with this, that is why in Purim it says Baruch Mordechai and Oro Haman, which equals each other in Gematria. Why? Right? And why does it have to be Adelo Yoda? You got to get drunk, right? To the extent that you don't know the difference between Baruch Mordechai, blessed Mordechai, and Haman curses Haman. You know why? Because to us, there are heroes and villains. Mordechai is the hero, and Haman is the villain. To God, there's no such thing as a villain. Everybody has to do what God wants. He so manipulates the Bria that everybody brings the Gula, including the Satan. The problem, what's the difference then? If everybody's bringing the Gula, including the Satan, what's the difference? The difference is this. Is Mordechai who wants to bring the Gula because that's the will of God, he gets reward. Haman who wants to bring the Gula, not that he wants, brings the Gula, right? He gets destroyed because his intent is to destroy the Jews. But ultimately, no man, nothing in this Bria can move an iota unless it has something to do with the Geula. And the way the Rebbe Shem does it is astounding. That's why Adelo Yoda. Until you don't know, because there is no difference to God. Haman will bring the Gula, and you know how he brought the Gula? Because he got Klal Yisrael to do tshuva en masse. What he did was astounding. Imagine one guy got the whole Jewish people to do tshuva. And as a result of that, Ezra could have been Mashiach ben Yosef, without getting into that, right? And of course Mordechai. But in the end, the God did the same guys. They're all bringing the Gula. Except he gets reward and he gets destroyed. That's the only difference, you see. And this is what's happening. Everybody is like we're actors in a play. And we all have to play according to the script. And the script is Olam Haba. That's the script for the Jews. Like it or not, you don't like it, you quit the play. You quit the play, you are obliterated because there's no other purpose for you. You see, all actors need to read the script and they have to follow the script. Same idea. This is the script, except the way it's done is incredible how the Moshe does it. Where he moves a pawn in one country and a pawn in another country, but ultimately speaking, this is the Gula. So let's hope that this Tishah B'Av Alavai, it should end, but if not, the countdown has begun. That's the incredible thing, and it's interesting that it all happened in terms of a blood moon. But I'll tell you something, privately, I believe something else will happen. Because that's in the countdown is for the negative. But remember one thing, and I'll end with this, and that's it. The Moshe is not going to bring the Mashiach to Klal Yisrael in this situation. Klal Yisrael is in the lowest pits they've ever been. You don't realize that. Klal Yisrael, most of Klal Yisrael is gone. They're not religious anymore. They're gone. They're all Tinik Shenishba, you see. And therefore, and even without getting into all that, Klal Yisrael is in the worst situation that it has ever been in terms of the diminishment and descent from Ruchnias into Tumah. Klal Yisrael doesn't even know what they're doing anymore. That's how bad it is. And I'll tell you something else. one of the reasons why does it seem like the Baruch Hashem enables all kinds of forces to destroy religion, Judaism? Because what the Baruch Hashem has to do, he has to dumb down the Jews. Why? Because he wants to bring the Geula, and the problem is he needs to make the Jews a tinik shenishba, and therefore they're not culpable. So any of their sins won't disturb the Geula. It's astounding. There used to be a time when he wanted to elevate the Jews, because they do mitzvahs. And if they do mitzvahs, that's the schos. But today, if he teaches them, the problem is that a lot of these people will still do sins. The problem is the more you know, the greater culpability you have. The more guilty you are. The more guilty you are, it's no good. It's connected what the Gula wants. Therefore, we are in a situation which is terrible in Ruchnias. Wherever you look, America, Europe, Eretz Yisrael, just the Ruchnias is terrible and so on. But that itself is a symbol of the Gula. That since most of Klal Yisrael is not culpable, because they themselves don't know what they're doing, therefore there's no kitrugim, and the Baruch Hashem can bring the Gula also, you see. So when you put all of this together, all of this is a jigsaw puzzle. You have little bits and pieces. But in the end, guess what? It's going to become an incredible picture where everything makes sense. Everything. It's like looking at a tapestry. You ever look at a tapestry on the back? All you see is threads sticking out. You say, I don't understand what this guy did. It's just a bunch of threads. So the guy says, no, you don't understand something. You're looking at it from the wrong way. Please come around. He said, wow, what an incredible picture. This is what you see. We see a tapestry with a bunch of threads sticking out. And there's no rhyme or reason to any of this. Turn around, and you will see a picture that is beyond belief. And in the end, all of us will declare the Chochmah of the Baruch Hashem, how God can bring the redemption beyond everybody's understanding. How he fooled everybody. That would look like Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu thought everything's over. He fooled them, because he had to teach them method B. But in the end, Avraham Avinu said, it's astounding. The very churban of Egypt is what made me rich. That's the Gula itself. So let's hope that we're going to see the Gula shortly. And I want to tell you something. We don't have to wait till Iran gets the bomb, because it depends on Klal Yisrael. God can end it immediately. They don't need to wait. But meanwhile, this is the process called Be'itoy. But it can always be Achishena, you see. So let's hope, Taka, that this is certainly the countdown. That there will be, I believe there will be a tremendous rise in Ruchnias, whatever, that besides introducing a way of where each of the enemies will destroy each other, because that's really what Iran is all about, and Yishmael against Edom, the Jewish people have to be uplifted. Something has to happen which brings Ruchnias back to the Jews. Because now we're in the time that we need to be ready for Mashiach. What's the Mashiach going to come to? A bunch of Amoratzim? What does that mean? It's like you can't go to New Guinea, right, and bring a smartphone. They'll collapse. They know what you're talking about. They cannot connect with this Ruchnias. Moshe will not do that. You see, they'll be in shock. You take a guy from New Guinea that hasn't seen a white man, right? You pick him up and you drop him in the middle of Fifth Avenue. He'll have a heart attack. You can't do that. When the Mashiach comes, you can't believe the awe that he's Megala. Everybody will be dying. Everybody's going to be in CCUs, cardiac care units, right? Can't do that. He has to elevate Klal Yisrael in some fashion. How it's going to happen is an incredible mystery. But I believe that this is part of the ultimate blood moon and so on. So let's hope it happens soon, right? And in the end, we finally get rid of all these Rishonim, everybody, and therefore the Beis Hamikdash, which is right over here, will be built, get rid of all this nonsense and so on, and then we can go back with the Geula and worshiping the Baruch Hashem the way it has to be. Thank you.
Amen.
Balaylo, b'dimasa